Hi, this will be a continuation of our discussion of React and React components. In the last video, I talked about components and props, and we used the example of a simple component that just took in props that configured the way the component displayed information. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about state. And stateful components are a little more complicated than simple components because they have this state feature, right? So state is essentially like a value that determines like the state of the component, and state can change, right? So props are kind of fixed. Like you give the prop to a component and it displays itself, according to the props. State is something that can happen inside the component, and when the component state changes, the component will redraw itself automatically. Okay. So for the example, what we'll do is we'll create a simple timer. So this timer has two pieces of state. It has a running property, right? That says like whether we're running or whether we're paused. So right now we're running. And then it has and right now we're paused, right? It also has another piece of state that is the time. So, it counts in seconds here. And the time is held in a timer property, right? So the time property, when it updates, then we automatically redraw ourselves and we show the new time here in this text field. Okay, so why don't we do this? I'm going to switch over to my project that I used in the previous example. So I'll cd to example. And then I think I have a folder in here, or a React project in here called example1. Wait, it says no file there. Wait a minute. Let me check my folder here. What do I got here? Oh, I guess it's an example projects. My mistake here. Let's do this. Do cd. There we go, right? And then we'll do cd example1. Okay. And then I'm going to run this project by typing React native run iOS. And what I like to do is I like to make sure I quit the previous one. So this terminal here is running the process for this thing. I'm going to Control-C to quit. I can even close a window. And then this thing here, I'll do Command-Shift-H to put it in the background, right? Or close it down in the simulator. And then I'll run my new project here. So this will take a moment to boot up this project in the simulator. And there's our example. So this is the example that we created last time, right? Let's go to those files, right? So I'm going to grab this folder here, and I'll just drag it on top of Atom to open the project in Atom. And we have a folder here with components, and we have two components. We have the app component, and we have the title bar. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a new component that'll be the counter, and I'm going to put the counter here in the middle, and we'll just get rid of all this extra stuff there. Okay, so I'm going to go to app here, and you can see app has all this. It has the title bar, and then it has this text, which is this thing, and then it's got these three boxes, which are these guys, and that was from the previous discussion. I'm actually just going to delete those. And if you're starting with a fresh project, you can just make a new project, and you can put this in the default code down here, or you can make an app component that you're going to display your component, the timer component in, right? So so this is where I'm going to start, and what I'll do is I'll make a brand new component here, and I'll call it timer. Let's call it timer thing. How about that, right? It's a good name. I'm just worried like timer is a pretty generic name. It might be used for something. So timer thing will be kind of our name. So I'll save that. I've got it in my components folder. And the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to import our default stuff. So we need to import React, and the component will be a stateful component. So it needs to import component also from React. Right? And then we'll need to import some stuff from React Native. So to get the stuff from React Native, what we'll do is we'll get text, because we'll use the text to display the time. We'll need button. So we'll use the button component to start and stop the timer. And then we might need the style sheet component to style our components. And then maybe we'll use the view component also as a container for both of these things. And we'll import these from React Native. Okay. So stateful components are defined as a class. So let's create a class here. We'll call it timer thing. And stateful components must extend React component, right? So what we'll do is we'll say extends component, and there we go. Stateful components have one requirement. So they extend React component, and then inside here, the one requirement is that they implement a method named render, okay? And this method must return some JSX, okay? So we'll block in what our component is going to be right now. So when this component returns something, what it's going to return is it's going to return a view with a text object, right? And this will have the time in it. I'll just kind of mock that up for now, right? So that'll be the time. And then it'll also return a button. Okay, and so the button is a built-in component that it creates a, a regular system button, okay? And the button has a title property that you can set. So this says what the button says on it. So I'll say run. Okay, so when we tap this, then the timer should start running. It's actually not going to start running yet because we haven't implemented the logic for that, but this is kind of how we would mock up our project there. Okay, so that's kind of our mock-up. And now we need to export this timer thing. Let's make this the default export, right? So we'll call it timer thing, right? And then we'll probably need some styles to style this stuff in here, right? So we'll say styles equals style sheet dot create, and oops, there we go, right? And then we'll put some styles in here, right? So so that looks pretty good. Let's do this. I think that looks pretty good there. Let's give it a quick test just to see that all this stuff works, right? So once we've got this kind of mocked up, now we can kind of run it into our app and see what it looks like. So what we'll do is we'll switch to app. We will import timer thing from, and since this is in the components folder, we can /timer -thing. That's the file name here for timer thing. And then what we'll do is we'll create an instance of timer thing right here inside of our component, okay, or inside this, app component, right? So we've got view, and then view will be, kind of a container for this and this guy, right? And then I think that looks pretty good. Why don't we give it a test? So we've got all that. We should now get rid of all this stuff and replace it with the timer. So I'll do Command R to replace that. And I can just see my timer down here at the bottom. It's kind of getting dominated by this title bar right here. Why don't we do this? Why don't we just delete the title bar for now, and then refresh it again. Oh, there's our text and there's our button, right? So I'm going to just delete the title bar. We can put the title bar back in later. We'll have to add some styles to complete that. So the text looks pretty good. It should probably be in the center though, right? So I think what's happening here is the text object takes up the full width here, but the text, like the characters in the text field, are aligned on the left side. So let's give this align center. Okay, so I'll switch back to timer thing, and I'll set some styles here. So maybe I might have some container styles that we might apply to this view, and then I'll have some styles here for the text. Let's call those styles timer, and let's say font size of, I don't know, 40 points. Let's make it font weight of bold, and text align center. How about that? And then we'll take these styles here. I didn't put any styles on the container, but I kind of mean that these will go on here. So I'll just apply these styles anyway. And then if I add some styles later, it'll all be all set up, right? So I'll say styles.container. And then for the timer styles right here, they'll be applied to this text object. So let's say style equals styles.timer. Okay? And then we'll switch back to our app and refresh it. And there we go. So that looks pretty good, right? So now we got our button, and I'm getting a warning here. It says failed prop type on press marked as required in button, right? So the button has a couple properties that are required. One of them is the title, which we did set, and then another one is called on press. And then we need to define this, and so this will be a function that we call on when you press the button. So you press the button, it'll call the function here. So we'll need to implement that, okay? So we're doing pretty good so far. We have a couple steps to go, so we'll probably have to move some of this into another video. But let's kind of block some things in first, okay? So earlier we discussed state, right? So where does state come in here? So we've got our component, and it's got its render method, and then this component could have state, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to define state in the constructor. Okay, so you're going to define a constructor method. This is a special name that is a method that's called when you create, like when you initialize or create an instance of this component. So it's called constructor. Constructor takes in props. So when we made a simple component, you defined a component. Let's actually just mock this up. Simple component, right, equals a function. And then this function takes in props, right? With a stateful component, the props come into the constructor, okay? So we'll take in props here in the constructor, and then we'll call super, and we'll pass the props to super, okay? So if this class extends another class, super is calling the constructor in that class, right? So we're going to take the props here and pass them up to component in case component wants to work with them or needs them for something, okay? And then this is how we're going to usually set up our stateful components, right? What I'm going to do here is I'm also going to define state now. So I'll say this.state equals, and state is always an object, and you can attach as many properties or key values to it as you like. In our case, I want 2 key values. I'm actually going to make this one really simple. I'm going to say on. So the timer is running when on is true, and the timer is not running when on is false. Okay, so that'll be our run. On and we're running. On is false and we're not running, right? And then our other property will be time, and I'll just set time equal to 0, and that'll be the time here. And we'll actually keep track of the time in milliseconds and then convert it or format it into seconds and minutes for the display. Okay, so there's our state, and that looks like a pretty good place to stop. So why don't we'll wrap this video up here, and then in the next video we'll kind of block in the methods that we need to make this timer function. Okay, so thanks for watching.